AOC humiliates herself. After calling Kennedy a thug, this backfired bad. The Senate chamber hummed with the usual rhythm of procedural monotony, a familiar cadence of prepared statements and polite posturing. Senators shuffled papers, staffers whispered in the wings, and reporters tapped away at their laptops, half listening to the predictable back and forth of a routine Judiciary Committee hearing. The air was thick with the weight of partisan divides, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary until it wasn't. Huddled near the center of the room, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, known for her sharp rhetoric and media savvy, had been invited to testify as a guest on a matter of public policy. Her presence wasn't unusual. She often brought a spark to these otherwise staid proceedings. But today, that spark was about to ignite something no one saw coming. As she wrapped up a fiery monologue about the dangers of divisive rhetoric in government, her tone shifted. She turned her gaze directly toward Senator John Kennedy, the Louisiana Republican, known for his folksy charm and unyielding commitment to his constituents. With a barely concealed smirk, AOC leaned into her microphone, her voice cutting through the chamber's low buzz like a blade. "Senator Kennedy," she said, pausing for effect, "you've become nothing more than a thug in a suit." The words landed like a thunderclap. The room froze. Senators stopped fidgeting. Staffers halted mid-step. Reporters' fingers hovered over keyboards, their eyes darting between AOC and Kennedy. Even those who leaned toward AOC's side of the aisle exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the line she'd just crossed. The insult wasn't just personal, it was a calculated jab meant to humiliate, to paint Kennedy as a caricature of the very divisiveness she'd just condemned. The cameras, ever present, zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression. Everyone waited for Kennedy to fire back, expecting the sharp-tongued Southerner to unleash one of his trademark quips, the kind that could slice through an opponent's argument with a smile. But Kennedy didn't rise to the bait. He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned forward, his weathered hands resting lightly on the desk, and tapped his microphone gently, as if testing whether it was still on. "Interesting," he said, his voice low, almost conversational, the single word carrying a weight that silenced the room further. The tension was palpable, a collective holding of breath as everyone waited for what came next. Kennedy's eyes, steady and unblinking, met AOC's for a brief moment before he continued. "I've been called worse," he said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "But you know what? I haven't been called out of touch. Not by the folks back in Louisiana, who write to me every week asking why this city feels more like a stage for grandstanding than a place that's supposed to help real people." The room shifted again this time, not in shock, but in anticipation. Kennedy wasn't shouting. He wasn't pointing fingers. He was doing something far more dangerous. He was telling a story. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper worn at the edges as if it had been carried for weeks. "This," he said, holding it up for the room to see, "is a letter from a woman named Maria, a single mother from Baton Rouge. She works 2 jobs, 12 hours a day, and still can't afford insulin for her son who's diabetic. She wrote to me asking why the people in this room spend more time arguing over words than fixing problems like hers." He paused, letting the words sink in, his gaze sweeping across the chamber, not accusing, but inviting reflection. "You want to talk about thugs, Representative Ocasio-Cortez? Try telling Maria that her son's life isn't worth your time because you're too busy scoring points for the cameras." A few senators shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes darting away from Kennedy's steady presence. AOC, for her part, looked caught off guard, her confident smirk faltering as she adjusted her posture, her fingers tightening around her pen. The room was no longer hers. Kennedy had flipped the script, and he wasn't done. I got another letter. He continued, his voice still calm, but now laced with a quiet intensity. This one's from a 12-year-old girl named Lily, from a small town called Nachitoches. She asked me why the people who make the rules seem to live in a different world from the rest of us. She's 12, and she's already figured out something most folks in this room haven't. That hit me, Representative, because I didn't have an answer for her. He folded the letter carefully, placing it back on the desk, with a reverence that made the gesture feel almost sacred. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning and the occasional click of a camera shutter. Kennedy looked directly at AOC, not with anger, Paul anger, but with a steady, piercing gaze. I may be a lot of things, he said, but I'm not a man who forgot who he works for. I'm here for Maria, for Lily, for the people who don't have the luxury of turning their struggles into sound bites. The weight of his words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. AOC opened her mouth to respond, but the words seemed to catch in her throat. She glanced at her notes, then at the committee chair, as if searching portal, hoping someone would intervene, but no one did. The chair, Senator Durbin, cleared his throat awkwardly, trying to move the hearing along, but the moment belonged to Kennedy. AOC's attempt to regain control came too late. I won't apologize for calling out behavior that undermines the public's trust, she said, her voice betraying a slight tremor. Senator Kennedy knows exactly what he's doing when he stirs up division for political gain. That's not leadership, it's manipulation. Her words were meant to sting,